Hello. Mysterious. Greco. Hello. Connor. Hello. Betty. Hello. Let's press some buttons, see what's going on. Julian. Hello. Excuse me. Right. Becca. Hello. Weather a little more bearable today, but only today. Previous days, absolutely not. So I'll explain in a minute, but I want to do something minor side quest today because it's too hard to think about physics, but we'll get to that in a second. Penne Wold, yes, it is warm. Okay. Oh, right. Let's see what we're doing. Let's make people roll in. So yeah, we've had a heat wave, and the entire country just breaks down if anything goes above 30 for too long. So I'm hot. Everyone's fed up. I've also, I guess, punishment of my own doing. I've been landscaping the garden this weekend, so I've been very hot and bothered, and I think we'll do something slightly different today. I want a bit more chill, if you excuse the pun, stream today. Bit more talking about code, a bit more tweaking and stuff. So we're going to do like a bit of a code review, go through some of the old bits of the code. I've got a specific kind of thing in mind to go through, like not just randomly picking files. But I think it'll be fun and it's useful to do. Yeah, so let's see if okay, put myself in the box. Right. First off, so what's been done between now and last stream is I fixed the parent transform issue. I came to the realization that I was making it a bit too complicated. So now we don't store the parent transform as a member. Okay. SP. What we store is the local transform, which doesn't change at the moment, but we also store the current applied scale, and that defaults to 1. So you assume that there's a applied scale of 1, and then we calculate the world transform, which is the transform we've been given, which is effectively the new parent transform times the local transform. That's what it does before. And then there shouldn't be a new line there. And then if the scales don't match, as in we have a change, if the scale of the new world transform is not what we've effectively cached, because we cached the previous scale, then we do all the code that we did before to change the body. What I do now, though, is I cache the original shape, so I can always apply a new scale, an absolute scale to the original shape. So what we do here is because if you remember before, the jolt scaled shape actually returns you a new shape. So I say, hey, given the original shape, please give me a new shape, which is that, but with this new scale. And then we apply it, and then we set it. And it actually works quite nicely. It's kind of, should we check it? Should we check it blends? Check my my OBS setup is all working. I've changed the transitions as well, so it fades rather than zooms in. I don't know whether that's better or worse, but it is what it is. Okay, so now when we come here, we select this, and then we go add a rigid body, and that goes there, and then this moves with it, and then if we scale this up, it goes bigger, and if we scale it down, it goes back. Same with this way. So this kind of works quite nicely. So we can make this twice as big in all dimensions. Yes, program level loads too. And then this now moves around. So the next So that works quite nicely. So the next thing really now is to figure out how to adjust the local transform via the gizmos, wire that in, and then we need to do serialization, and then we need to do making sure we can duplicate it. There's like there's quite a lot left to do, but we're kind of at a natural stopping point now. And if I'm being honest, it's a bit too hot to think about that. So I thought do something, take a bit of a break today and do something different, but the next stream we'll be back on it. I should mention, and this is a fun one, and I would put money on no one's going to guess what I'm going to say next. Okay. There may be an interruption to the stream because, Biokuaz, there is a shrew in my office. One of the cats today brought in a live shrew and it ran into my office and I'm yet to extract it. I have a humane trap down, but somewhere in here. So if I suddenly get disconnected, that's because a small rodent has chewed through my cables. But I'm on Shrew Watch at the moment. I have seen it in here, so we'll see. No one would guess Shrew. Anyway, so I'm hoping I can safely extract it and return it to the field from whence it came. And if I get hungry, there is a peanut butter snack for me waiting me in a humane trap, assuming I don't get myself caught in it. But yes, just fair warning, if I suddenly disappear, shrew. Okay, get a cat. I got 2 cats. That's the reason I have a shrew. Well, we've definitely got some maths problems here and there, so maybe good to have you around. Okay, so let's go back to the code. Okay. Yeah, great. One more mouth to feed. Anyway, I'm hoping it has a safe and happy ending. I strongly suspect it will not have a happy ending because one of the cats will get it tonight, but we'll see. How much Claude is there in Codebase? None? Question mark? Almost none. Like we've handwritten pretty much everything. I've asked the Oracle a few questions, but I've not used an agent to write any code. So I'd say there's 0 Claude generated code directly in it. We're pretty much handwriting everything as we go along. Okay, so I was writing this, right? Speaking of which, and it got me thinking because originally we had this something along the lines of this, okay, which I think kind of makes logical sense. Okay, but there's a very important reason why I changed it. So we were like, calculate the world transform. First of all, set the position and rotation because that's what we can do directly with the API, and then the scale we have to handle separately, right? And I was like, that seems logical. Okay, hopefully everyone's with me at this point. Like this seems logical. Do the thing we can do, and then do the complex thing. There's a reason I changed it to this, and that's because of this line. Okay. By the way, I had a comment on one of the videos saying that the new system I've got for presenting the code doesn't scroll that nicely and people find it hard to follow. So do let me know like what that's like for you, because again, this is immeasurably easier for me to write code on. But if it's really difficult for you to read or jumpy or whatever, then let me know and I'll see if I can tweak it. At no point did I ever express any concern that I was scared of the shrew. I outsized it by several orders of magnitude. Like, I'm pretty sure I could take the shrew in a fight. I'm more concerned for its well-being than mine, if I'm being totally honest. Okay. Well, we'll see how it goes. Okay, so it came down to this line, right? And as everyone knows, I'm a strong advocate of using exceptions to communicate errors, blah, 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 blah. But also, like, and don't get me wrong, I mean, that generates plenty of controversy, plenty of shorts, plenty of engagement. It's great. And that's the reason to use exceptions, like in and of itself. But I was looking at this and I was like, this is not, I would argue, this here, right, is not like correct exception code, okay? because it doesn't conform to what's known as the strong exception guarantee. Now, the strong exception guarantee is a concept in C++ that says that if a method has the strong exception guarantee and it throws, the object itself is left in exactly the same state. So the canonical example of this is vector pushback. If vector pushback throws, it's as if pushback was never called, right? That's kind of the guarantee you get. So pushback has the strong exception guarantee, right? So you can then try and push back again or do whatever you want. This mutates the state of the object, then potentially throws. And I was like, that's not right. We should basically do all the calculations, do all the checking effectively for all the post conditions, and then commit the changes. So there is nothing here that can throw, because as far as I know, my jolt doesn't throw after this, okay? And I think that makes sense, and I think that's better, and I prefer this now. So this code, and like philosophically, one could argue we shouldn't throw an exception here, and I would understand people's point on that, because if you are... And hello. Imagine if you're using this editor, right, and you're moving this widget around and you somehow set an invalid value, right, and an exception is thrown and the whole thing dies. That sounds like a pretty poor user experience. But you have to remember, like, I'm not writing this for other people. I'm writing this for myself. And as a solo developer on this, I need to fail pretty hard and fast on most errors so I can fix them. And whilst I still in the context of it. So I think like being unable to set the parent transform rigid body constitutes a hard application error. And I want to throw and handle that. However, at the moment, I just print the stack trace, but I might want to handle that in other ways. So I think this is fine. Then I was like, what other places am I, shrew an exception is a great pun, by the way. What other places am I, not having using the strong exception guarantee? And what places am I maybe overzealously using exceptions? I'm sure Harand will be pleased to hear me admit that I think there are places in this code base that shouldn't use exceptions, and I was maybe a bit gung-ho on using it. So now, because if you look at this code base now, we now have exceptions, we have alternate values via optional, we have asserts, we have contracts, we have literally every single possible method for detecting and reporting errors. So what I want to do today is, and also I found a couple of them that are UB, which is really fun. So what I want to do today is kind of, well, you'll see what the downside is later, right? Because I think the downside is not necessarily in efficiency. I think it's more in ergonomics. And I've got a good example of this later, which we'll go through. But today I want to kind of take stock of what we've been doing. I want to go and replace some code. Because we've now got contracts, I think this is a good chance to stop and go and add contracts everywhere we need them. So I have error. I have expect, right? So expect here is effectively an assert, right? You can think of this as a function, as an assert as a function as a predicate, and then if it fails, the program leans on its sword, right? Now, I kind of envisioned that expect would be, this would have some sort of compile time differentiator in it, right? So that in release mode, this would do nothing. So it'd be a no-op and it'd get optimized out. So effectively, we're using this as an assert, right? And in my mind, an assert is there just to check preconditions. Like your narrow contracted function has some preconditions, and if you fail to adhere to those, that is absolutely your fault, right? The bug is your bug because you've not followed the contract. So an assert is really just a courtesy, right? It's a courtesy to the caller to say, look, you've made a mistake, but in debug mode, I'll catch that. I'll report that for you. So in my mind, expect would eventually be compile timed out. We can pretty much do all that now with contracts. So my first point of call is to go through where we use expect, see if we can just convert some of these to contracts. I want some more experience with contracts. I've not really got a lot of experience with it. So I want to, and for me to get experience with something, I need to kind of write it out loads and loads of times. So the first thing we're going to do is we're kind of going to grep the code for expect and see if we can integrate some more contracts. That's the first thing. The other thing is to go through some exception codes that we've done and see, kind of, I don't know, double check, sanity check to ourselves. Is it actually a hard error there, or could we be using an alternative value? And I'll try and explain some of these terms as we go along, but if I lose anyone, do stop and ask questions, because in my mind, I have a very strong taxonomy of terms around like error handling, and that's what I try and stick to. But like as we all know, everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes. I sometimes don't stick strictly to my own philosophy, and sometimes I am like over I can't speak today. Over evangelical on my own philosophy. So we'll see where we go. So yes, so that all goes away with contracts, right? Because contracts will just no-op out all the precondition checks, right? If you set it to ignore. So we kind of get that for free. So I think there's a good place to start, right? And that is program. So program, which is our abstraction over an OpenGL program, so that's got a compiled fragment shader and vertex shader, has like these expectations. So you cannot bind something if it is already bound. That we would consider that an error. That is the precondition of this function is that it is not already bound, and similarly the precondition for unbind is that it is bound. So those are pretty clear, preconditions, and I think like a really good example of how we can use contracts. So the first thing I want to do is like look at all this. Like I want to get rid of all this expect gubbins here, right? That should be contract. I think that's largely it. Like I still think I want to throw if you cannot create this, like that you still need to throw an exception from a constructor, right? It's the only way to communicate an error from a constructor. So if I say, please construct this program, and I've given it an invalid vertex or fragment shader, like I think I want to stop there, like because this is not an engine, because I'm not allowing people to write their own shaders, like I'm shipping the shaders with this game. Like if that fails to compile, then we're shit out of luck, right? So all bets are off anyway. So I still think this keeps the call site, the syntax cleaner. We just throw it up, we catch it, we log it, we do whatever, right? So I think that's fine. Interesting. We even have some preconditions on the constructor. So I think we can go through and sort of remove a lot of these expects. Auto deduces a type, basically. Or in this case, it just becomes the type on the right, but it's just, I find it easier. Personally, I find this easier to read, but dealer's choice. So let's do, this is going to be a little bit difficult in the new setup because I don't think I can have the code side by side. I can split this down here and open this up. So we might have to, let me know if this doesn't read right, because what I'm going to try and do is move between the two. Yeah, exactly. Major issue. I kind of like major and minor kind of leave something up to interpretation. But my view is that an error, right? So given valid preconditions, failure to meet the post conditions is an error and should be reported via an exception, right? If it is meaningful for you to return some sort of alternative value instead, an optional and expected, then it is not an error, and then you would communicate it through that. But yeah, so this should have pre vertex shader dot type equals shader type vertex. And it's like, okay, and then it should also have, I think I need to do this to make Clang format accept it. Yeah. It might not. I don't think I've ever written one on a constructor before, so I might have to just check the syntax. But that's basically what I want. I want to codify as part of the function definition, right? The contract. So this is now clear. If anyone's given if anyone's given just this as a header file, right? Thank you. If anyone's given, I'm not sure why. I'm going to compile this because I've got a feeling it's very new and I'm still learning the syntax. So I'm not sure what it looks like on a constructor. Also, you have to remember, ClangD really, really doesn't like contracts. So it's going to mess up ClangD until they catch up. Okay, that's fine. So we'll just have to ignore these ClangD errors for now, but then we have to ignore it for reflection anyway. So I can't let ClangD's tooling stand in the way of progress. Okay. So I think this now, for me, this is clearer because this basically, if you get given just this header file and nothing else, you'll be like, right, even though I couldn't probably infer from the name, like I 100% know that these must hold for the program to run. And we have yes, they go after, I think. So then we would have to have, because you remove the semicolon, right? So this would have to be compute. Or we'll run it and find out. I can either run it or won't. Scope. Oh, yeah. But I think what I probably envision happening more is that exceptions will happen more in the game logic. They'll always happen in constructors, but they'll happen more as like application level errors rather than library level errors, because we'll see later, it should be the choice of, in a lot of cases, it should be the choice of the caller, whether it should be an exception or not. And we'll see that we'll see that when we get on to one of the big things I want to change. Right, this seems to work fine, right? This is shaded things. Where's me? We've got my render targets. This is OpenGLing nicely. Cool. So now we get to like the next sort of philosophical point that I want to kind of, again, I'm still there is no, as far as I'm aware, best practice for contracts because no one is really using it. I mean, some like Bloomberg have a lot of thoughts on it because they effectively wrote the P2900, the contracts paper. But actually, as it is in the C+ standard, I think everyone's still kind of figuring out what it means. So I have thoughts, as I often do. If we look here at bind, right? One might assume that we just say for bind here, like pre not is bound, right? And that is kind of okay, but I think it's actually, I think on the surface it's okay, but I think practicality is useless and actually misleading because you said bind is a public function. Like anyone can call bind on this constructed object. It's going to get very philosophical today, by the way. And I've said, but you can't call this unless it's bound. But what I've actually said is you can't call this unless this internal member that you cannot see or directly interact with is false. And that seems like lame. do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think the contracts should rely on internal implementation details because like anything more complex than this, how do I know what that is? How do I influence that? So I think what we need to start doing is actually start expanding the APIs a bit. And so context auto is bound, right? And then we can be like pre is bound. I would say modern C++ is trying desperately to get rid of macros, yes, and the preprocessor. And a lot of stuff we've got now is basically codified and like first-class language or library support for what macros do. It should even be a check or just ignored on dog bite. So this is, I think Matthias here makes an absolutely great point, right? Is this a precondition at all? Like, this is something we should be asking ourselves. Like, should yeah, sorry, backwards logic, thank you. Oh, hang on, I'll just... What have I done? Program, right. The question is, right, is this even a precondition at all? Okay. And it's really up to us, right, as the designers of this class, right, as the implementers. It's really up to us to decide what is a precondition and what is valid. I have chosen personally to say calling bind more than once is invalid, because I would suspect that is probably a bug, and nowhere in the code that we've written so far is ever required to bind more than once. So what, in my mind, if I do bind more than once, I'm probably doing something weird, and I'm probably introduced a bug, and I want to catch that. If in the future we have more complex pipelines which necessitate multiple bindings, then sure, we can just change, like, it's our interface, right? We're just going to change the preconditions. It's only us who's consuming this code. But I'm, as as someone who's just kind of developing this by themselves, I want to be very defensive in a lot of cases. But I want to try and catch bugs as soon as possible. Ideally, like, using the language mechanisms that we're provided. I don't really know Rust, so I can't really say, but potentially. And other languages, I think, have some contracts. The red underlines just because, like, ClangD does not support contracts yet. It fundamentally does not understand the syntax, so it's going to get very grumpy about it. There's not really a lot we can do about it. So also, like, contract. Just to be clear, like, this is what happens when a contract gets violated. As part of contracts, there are 4 modes that you can put the contract handler in, and I have it set to observe. So, no, sorry, I have it set to enforce, which means it will call my handler violation and then it will die. So if any of the preconditions or postconditions that we have fail, then this gets called. We'll log it. We'll log it with a full stack trace, and the comment there is the pre or post condition text, and then it will terminate. So we will never get further than that. We can also put it into observe, where we'll only log it, and we can also put it into ignore, which means it will just not do anything, and then that's what you do in release mode. We could also technically here, and I'm probably going to do it just for safety, I guess. We could now have, like, is bound, right? So before we call it, it's not bound, and after we call it, it is bound. Kind of just tests it for free for us as we go along. So here we have kind of like, it's too defensive, I'd say, when you're not getting the value from it, as in, like, it is now more development effort than the bugs you save, or the maintenance burden is too high. For me, like, this is fine. Like, this is. I also want to experiment with the new 26 features, so, like, I've got to kind of commit to them at a certain point. Why declare functions on separate line from defining in header when they're just one line apart in the file? Is it safeguarding if we need to move code later? What do you mean? Oh no, these are 2 files. This is a split view, by the way. This is the CP file and this is the header file. It's just the only way I can kind of show it on this screen. So we actually need to implement this. I guess this. Why declare functions? Oh, this is just how I think it should read personally. This is just my I declare functions. Oh, sorry, in the contract handler violation. Because I have like all the warnings on, and one of the warnings GCC really likes to omit is you have like this free function without giving it a definition before. I should just disable that warning and then not have to do it. That is merely just to keep the compiler happy. This could be no accept as well, but I've kind of shied away a little bit from using no accept, just because, again, not really thought too much about it. And I don't know if this is the change where I want to start introducing that, but this is a wide contract, which doesn't throw. So that's kind of a good idea for being. But pragma warning would just be more typing, right? It would make the code uglier. It's easier just to slap a declaration before the definition. So somewhere in here, so native handle here. That's kind of how we'd implement. That's ensure is my exception check handler, right? It takes a thing, and then if it's not some sort of predicate or thing that contextually evaluates to bool, and if it's false, it will throw an exception with the string, with the format string after it. We should go through more of these to check how valid they are, but I think for now this is fine. Like, we have to throw in a constructor. So now also what you find is that so now all these is bound, all these set uniforms. Now, can I do this with the macro? Right, let's try it with the macro. I want to do QA into the end, space, escape, O, // tab, pre is bound, Q. Oh, Jesus, where whoa, what am I doing here? What? Hey? Right. I can't quite understand why my macro thinks it's like legit for me to go to a different file. Like, let me replay the macro. It does it, and then I go to a different file? But I can just go back. Well, that's not how Vim works. And then I guess we can have it on the templated function here as well, because it is the same. Although this will call. So I guess this is kind of like some of the discussion around contracts is like, if this only ever calls this, and this sorry, I don't know if you can see. If this, right, if set uniforms only ever calls set uniform, and set uniform has the same preconditions, does it need to check it here? And I think at the moment that's the case, but I think there might be opportunities for like future compiler optimizations, right? Like, if it knows every single path has the same precondition, there's no need for it to check it again. But again, I still think we should be explicit with our contract. The way I view it is that if someone just had this header file, right, how can we tell them what to do? Like, ideally, we would have written a load of comments, which, well, actually, before, the only way to communicate preconditions, right, was you either put in a comment or someone went and read the source code. Now that we're explicit, I think that's fine. I think this is kind of what I want, right? Like, it's bound it doesn't care whether it's on the preconditions. That is true as well, yes. And you're right, I do want this. Yes, that is actually a really good point. I hadn't considered that. I do want the stack trace to come from here, not the child. Because then it'd be like, well, why? Like, yeah, I want the exact failing point to be at the top of the stack. Let's just check this runs. Oh. Oh, isn't that curious? It's got a function here, and the compiler's determined it's never used. I wonder if this is a bug in contracts. How interesting. But also, this doesn't make any sense because how can it, if we were shipping this as a library, like we won't know who consumes it. Harand, you can use internal ones. I think it's good practice to not use internal details like that. So as we go through, like if we do that, are we recodifying those into some sort of public function, which is explicit in what you're checking? So this is exactly the discussion we had earlier. It's like this could just be like it's bound, right? But this is lame because as a caller, like you're basically asking me, like, please satisfy this condition of this thing that you can't really see or influence. So whilst you can, I think that would probably end up being considered best practice. Be considered bad practice. I'm kind of curious about this is bound though, because like I sure do. Why is it saying inline function used? Yeah, no, wait a minute, hang on. Used but never defined. That's the difference. It's not saying it's unused. It's saying I've used but I've not defined it. Oh, it's because it's context expert. It has to be in the header file. Sorry. I could just make that not context expert to keep it in line with everything else. I don't think I'm going to get much for that being context expert, if I'm being totally honest with you. That'll fix it. No, context expert has to be in the header file. Because if you're doing it at compile time, you have to have the definition there and then. You cannot wait for the linker to tell you what the function does. But in this case, whilst context for all the things is indeed a good mantra, I actually think in this case, when there's no advantages for anything being else, when nothing else in that class can be context, I think the readability of having all the implementations together in the CPU file is more important. Okay, cool. So let's have a look at this. So program and program. So this is now sort of contractorized program. So I think that's okay. I think that's better. I quite like that. Like this is kind of how eventually I want all my C++ to look, right? Obviously without the weird clang D errors at the end, I could do without that, but you know, we do what we can do. And when clang, obviously I have to put these in here, the comments at the end, because clang format doesn't understand it either. Oh god, yeah, what a great point. I don't need any of these expects anymore, do I? What a great point. That was literally the whole point of doing this. Look how much cleaner my code is. Am I developing in a container? No, I'm building in a container. It's true, there is this clang D error aesthetic I'm going for. Happy Hamster Harry, thank you for being here. Let's just amend that commit, pretend that's what I meant to do from the start. Right. Let's keep going. Where else are we expecting that we could be preing? Don't like that. The whole stream. I think it's going to be part of it. I also want to rewrite some of the. We'll go for a little bit doing this. I also want to rewrite some exception code to be not using exceptions and kind of talk through the design philosophy around that. But I think it's kind of cathartic to kind of go through a few pieces like this, and also it's a chance for us to revisit bits of code. Well, actually, I technically do develop in a container because it's WSL, and which WSL is just uses like a thin hypervisor. So I guess I'm kind of technically in a segregated environment, but I don't need all my dot files and everything in Git. My build system is relatively reproducible. What I want is the reproducible build system, so that's why I build in Docker. A cathartic stream where we remove some exceptions is absolutely your kind of stream. Okay, so here we go, matrix. So this is another good one. Like, so here's a really interesting one now, right? Something maths. Someone's talking about maths earlier. Let's maths. Okay. This matrix operation here, right, relies on the determinant not being 0 because we have to divide by it. We could throw an exception, but I don't think our fundamental maths class should be throwing exceptions on errors, right? We've fundamentally done something wrong if we're at that point. Also, like, there's a certain at that point there could be a performance impact. Like, there's going to be matrix multiplication on the hot path, right? But I do want in debug to check whether we got this far, right? I think that's fair, and I don't want this to return an alternative value. I don't want this to be optional matrix 4 or expected matrix 4. That sounds like it's terrible ergonomics, right? Invert this matrix, right? And in debug mode, if we give it a bad matrix, then we should detect that because it's probably potentially always going to come up in that situation. There's an argument that anything that touches user input should be kind of like well defined, right? How much user input is eventually going to make its way down to this is kind of debatable, but I would say this class is not designed maybe directly to process like direct user input. It's not taking like an SQL query string or like a username or password, right? But I think we want to keep this contract narrow, right? And what that means is it has preconditions that the matrix, I guess, itself is invertible, but at the end of the day, we will just accept that if you get into this case, you're going to get UB. Correct, yes, there's also that argument as well. You're welcome. I'm glad I can be useful. It's nice when I can kind of produce something that's useful to a community, so I'm glad you enjoyed it. Anyway, so what we can do now is, rather than expect, we can do contract assert. So contract assert, I might need to include contract that, and I can't remember if it's stood contract assert. I think it's a new keyword, yeah. Basically, this is the new assert, right? So assert is a macro, and who knows what that does under the hood. It's a macro, so therefore it is inherently bad. That is a wild accusation to make. I'm not a big fan of macros. Contract assert will trigger the contract assertion handler if the predicate is false, okay? So this allows us to use the exact same mechanisms that we had before, which means in release mode we can set it to ignore, it goes away, bish bash bosh. So this, any internal expects that we use will now become contract asserts. This is fine. This is fine. So we'll be seeing little snippets of the game today, I guess, just to keep everyone engaged, but also because like I want to keep running it and checking. Like obviously I don't have like a full system test to run, but like it's kind of good enough just to check that it loads and we can move around. You know, we got the different render targets, we got all the like ambient occlusion, we got the bloom, we got the editing, got the coroutine based light flicker. Woo! And check it correctly spins up and shuts down. Okay. Contract assert in matrix 4. Okay. I'm not going to do all these live. I might do some of them off stream, but I think it's good. I think it's fun to do live. I think this is a useful educationally, and again, a bit of practice for myself. So, oh, hang on. I have just spotted something. I need to remove these from the constructor. Ooh, it's He really doesn't like this. Okay, fine. We are potentially going to have some issues with clangd if we use the contracts header file, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. I've never used Emacs, so I don't have an opinion on it. I know people who use Emacs and really like it. I know people who use Doom Emacs and really like it. You use what works for you. I like Vim. That's because it's kind of the first terminal editor I discovered and used back in university. I'm sure if I discovered Emacs first, that would be my preference. Yep, the streams are all available on the channel straight afterwards. Again, let's just make that look like it's what I meant to do. Cool. Okay. Anything else good? I mean, Visual Studio has Vim bindings, right? They're not perfect, but they're better than nothing. Okay, so let me go through where there's some undefined behavior, because I think that's fun. I think that is fun. And then this is undefined behavior. Does anyone know why? So this is a OpenGL callback function that we register. So internally, when OpenGL detects an error, it calls this, and at the moment we throw, and then we catch that with the details of the OpenGL error. No, I tend to keep my work experience and my personal experience separate. Like I have kind of there's three pillars to my life, like family, work, and YouTube, and I try and keep them all as separate from each other as possible. Well, this is a great question. It doesn't. Throwing across the C boundary is effectively undefined behavior because the C API is not going to be expecting that. So it could leave stuff in all sorts of weird unknown states. So what we really should be doing, so this is, I'd actually argue, an incorrect use of exceptions because we're bouncing we've gone from C++ to C, right? The C is then called a C++ function as a callback, and then we've thrown, and it's going to try and unwind all those stacks, and it's going to do something weird across the C++ boundary. So in this case, the correct answer is to just die, right? Like we should just lean on our sword here. I would argue that if OpenGL has gone wrong, especially again, the ethos that I want to fail hard and fast and catch as many errors as I can early on, like we should call it quits here. Like still print the stack trace and still print the error, but still print this, but like end it. Is there a way to make the compilation and run process faster? So compilation C++ is always like is a thorny subject. You can use stuff like Ccache if you're using CMake, which is what I now use. So that will cache your previous build artifacts. So if they've not changed, then it won't rebuild them. I mean, if you really want to go full on distributed build system with Bazel, but that might be a little bit too much for a single project. Other than that, just be mindful that changing header files tends to cascade compilation errors. Compilation time. You can use stuff like Pimple to move stuff to a CPP file. There's a few things you can do. It really depends on like the specifics of the bottleneck you've got. Well, actually, what I think that we should provide this as a helper function, right? What we should basically have is this, but without the predicate, okay? And then like, I don't know, die, drop mic, whatever you want to call it, right? So that all goes in there, and then this is just like and then and then we know that this is going to end, right? And then this can go, I guess technically this is stood unreachable as well afterwards, but I don't... I think isn't there like a no return? Is there a no return attribute? I'm going to try, hang on. This could all explode horribly. Oh. Ho, 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 ho. Hang on, there is a Twitch obligation I must now meet. Sorry. What's the fastest way to create cross-platform C++ projects along with VC projects and whatnot? Do you have a template repo we can fork? I don't. You can look at one of my old projects called Blind.io, which does cross-compile for Windows and Linux, and you can see how that's done. There's a project called Cookie Cutter, which is a project that allows you to generate templates. So you could define your project once as a C++ cookie cutter and then use that tool to generate those. So you could pay I would suggest, if this is something you do a lot, pay the cost once of setting up a cookie cutter and then just keep stamping out new projects. In terms of like specifics about cross-platform stuff, I prefer like common header files and then platform-specific CPP files, and then using CMake to just build the one that you need. You'd have to use Pimple potentially there. I don't know. I hope that answers your question. To be honest, I've never used VC Package and I've never used Conan. That is something on my list to learn. So I strongly suspect as well that what you're kind of asking is a reasonably solved problem. So like any of the major oracles will probably be able to generate you a pretty standard project setup. And I think that's a good use for LLMs and stuff like that. Like, hey, give me a CMake project skeleton that cross compiles for Linux and Windows, like go. That'll probably save you some time and get you going. Right. The fun fact about pressing that button is that it doesn't actually bring this to the front. So let's go. So C++. I think there's no return attribute. Indicates that the function will not return control code to the function after it finishes. Right. So I think we want that. So let me just press that. So I think we can then do no return. And then we go Windows, and then we can do I quite like drop mic. What's life without whimsy? I write wrappers around OpenGL as much as possible. So we have like a program abstraction, a buffer abstraction, a render target abstraction, a frame buffer, like basically all the primitives I wrap immediately to handle the state of them, because you get back like an integer handle, right? That needs to be freed, deleted, returned, whatever OpenGL verb they use at the time. So everything I think is wrapped. So everything we do is wrapped. I think I understand the comment that said this comment, but it seems that whenever the cursor crosses the screen, the code tends to... Okay, I think there's some tmux settings I can tweak to make the scrolling smoother, so I will have a look at that before the next stream, and if it is a total disaster, then we can always go back. But I must say, I am personally, because this is all about me, not you the viewers, obviously, I really like this new setup. Also, it's much safer because I'm not just sharing my screen, everything is bound to a window, so it doesn't matter if stuff pops up accidentally or whatever. Could I? So no. So I have written basically a thin wrapper around OpenGL to make it more ergonomic to work with. I've not implemented a platform, like an API agnostic renderer, and those are two quite different things. It would be very, if I was to try and write a Vulkan backend for this, it would end up trying to munge it a lot into like the OpenGL philosophy, and I don't think that would work. Also, the refresh rate of the fake window needs up here. I don't know how I do that. Is that OBS? Does OBS need to sample it at a different rate? We'll get there. We'll get there. Okay, so this should run. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's still going to run because we haven't changed anything conceptually. Nope, no plans. Like, again, as one person just kind of doing this, like I've got to be quite tight with my requirements and my scope. My scope is very much like Windows only. stood unreachable just means that you invoke undefined behavior if you hit it. It's just, I think it's more of a hint to the compiler that nothing's going to happen after this. The fact that we mark the function as no return probably means we can remove it, but I'll just leave it in there for now because I don't think it's really hurting anyone. And also, what's the profiler gubbins that we did? Can you remember? Resolve symbol, here we go. I was already on it. Must have been doing that last. This here does the same thing. Lib backtrace is a C API, so we go from C++ into C, back to C++, throw UB. So this again should be UFPS. I think this will change eventually to just log an error and ignore. Like, if we can't produce a backtrace for our custom sampling profiler, that's not really an error. But for now, because we've only recently built that and there's probably some bugs in it and we want to prove it out, yeah, we should definitely be more aggressive there. Is the planning for CP29 already out or not yet? I don't know if there's a top level like WG21 paper for that. I think there might be some. I think there's Evolution might have put something out, or the Direction group might have put something out. I think memory safety is going to be the main one. The only things that have kind of been approved to merge into the draft so far are, I think, default increment operator with the, which one is it? The postfix. So if you do whichever one, hang on a minute, I'll try this out. Postfix can be defaulted if you define the prefix increment operator, because it just creates a temp and increments and returns it. So it will just auto-generate that for you. And contracts on virtual functions has just been approved for the draft. So at the moment, if we have any virtual functions, we cannot use preconditions on those. You mentioned how OpenGL download those functions as own. I don't know. I mean, DirectX won't, because it's Microsoft, right? So you just include the DirectX headers and you get access to the functions. OpenGL does it just because that's just, I think, historically how you manage to get the driver-specific implementations. There's performance impacts like negligible. It's literally just resolving a bunch of function pointers that you do once at startup. So no, not really. After that, you just store them as global function pointers. So there's no real difference to calling it. Okay, so fine, let's remove UB in C throw. Sure, sounds good. I think the other one, there's quite this. I don't know if we're going to do this now, but I think this is another one. This is another interesting one to think about. Is like, because I know that we have it, because I did have a little squiz through the code before the stream started just to make sure there was enough stuff to kind of talk about. And this one is interesting because, again, I want this to be effectively UB if the handle isn't passed, right? So like, this is the precondition is that you only remove a handle that is valid. So this should be a precondition, and I think we can probably make it one by, but again, so this is a great example that, like, back to Haran, your point, like, I don't want to have like handle.index is less than sparse, like the size of the internal sparse index, a sparse collection. I don't want to pre-check that the dense index is less than the size of the dense. Do you know what I mean? Like, what a miserable set of preconditions that is. What I really want is a function which is like, is valid, and you give it a handle, or contains is actually the correct word there. So let's see if we can do that quickly, and then I think we'll move on to something else. So const expr auto contains handle type handle bool, right? And then Cinder, no worries. Thanks for coming along. I wish you all the best tomorrow. Right, so this should now be Hang on. I've got to do all the template bloody gubbins. Shouldn't complain. I do like templates. So auto sparse t allocator contains, right? So Context has a couple of advantages, right? One, like if the compiler can do it at compile time, it then will. So like I might get some optimizations kind of for free without even realizing it. Two, I think this is kind of anecdotal, but I think even marking it as context spread, the compiler can still do certain runtime optimizations with it. But the third one is that you cannot have UB in context spread functions. It's not allowed. So context spread is de facto an undefined behavior sanitizer. Stub flat map I think is great. I really like it. We did start using it for this, but then it did turn out to be not quite the right shape for the problem we were solving. But I do think flat map is a really good addition. I think it's great if you want, so originally we were using it because we wanted contiguous allocation of elements, which is what it gives you. By default, obviously you can template it whatever, but because it's a container adapter, right? But if you template it on the vector, which is the default, you get contiguous allocation and then log n search time, which is not bad, like not to be sniffed at. So yeah, I think it's good. I don't necessarily know if it's like the fix all for everyone's woes, but I think it's a good addition to the language. So I think what we can do now, right, is basically take these and then do like hang on. If that return false, and basically just check if any of these, basically rather than these being an assertion failure or an ensure failure, these now just return false, right? And if we get to the end, then we kind of know it's there. I think that's right. Yes, you're right. That's not C++. So now we can be like, hey, that this now has a precondition. Contains handle. I think that's the only one we need, because operator is a wide contract and we'll just return an empty optional if it doesn't exist. This is Windows Terminal. Like, this is the Windows Terminal application. But do you mean like command or PowerShell? Yeah, like I'm just so much more comfortable than its command line. And then, so I don't think there's now. So I think the only expecs now are the ones that we just need to remove. Sorry, ensure are the ones we need to remove. So now we get rid of that. So now we can just calculate those, right? So that's going to be even more efficient. And like, just don't violate the preconditions, right? Just don't have bugs in your code. I'm pretty sure now we can be like assert true s dot contains h. And then wherever we do the remove, here we go. So after this, we should be able to do assert false s dot contain H. Womp womp womp. Sad trombone. Ooh, constification here. So there's this concept in P2900, which is the paper for contracts, so effectively contracts, called constification, in that any expression in the pre-statement is automatically const. So you cannot use it to mutate variables, right? Because you might remove those in the release build, and that would fundamentally change the logic of your program. This was a bit of a controversial sticking point, but I think constification won out. So I can see here I've definitely got some issue. Cannot convert const UFPS sparse set in pointer to UFPS sparse set. So let's have a look at the specifics of this. So where's this failing here? So I cannot convert. It's interesting. It's cannot convert. I think the issue here, and this is interesting, I don't know if this is a bug or I don't know if I've misunderstood how it works, but what it's basically doing is saying I can't call the const function from the non-const. Cannot convert, because this is sparse set in pointer, right? That's the type of the object I'm calling. That's the type of this, right? Initial argument this of const reval contains. If I just missed a. Oh, hang on. I think that's my fault. I've missed a const. Oh, is that nice? Ho, 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 ho. All right, we crashed the compiler. That is definitely a bug in right. I don't think we're doing that one today because GCC has crashed. I could rebuild GCC so they fixed it in the latest trunk build, but that might be taking it too far. Okay, let's. Well, I feel like we've all learned something there, so let's just what? Let's revert that. Oh, hang on, I meant to commit. Fun. That was a fun one. I enjoyed that. That was good. Okay, right. Let's go back to the philosophy of error handling, because I think what do I think? I think this might be wrong. Let's go up. If I fail to serialize something, right, I throw an exception. YAML, the library, also throws switches its right, and I don't think there's anything that's inherently wrong with that. But either way, out of serialize and deserialize is going to escape either one of my exceptions or one of a third-party library exception. This makes the ergonomics a little bit cumbersome because, like I'd have to potentially try catch either of those two. I think the YAML one doesn't inherit from std runtime exception, so you could do a more generic one. But either way, like, is it a hard error if your YAML is invalid? I think the answer is at the point where you're doing the YAML parsing. The answer is no. I think the answer maybe at the point in your application where the very important YAML file, which has to be valid, fails, is an exception. But I don't think it's up to the serialization class to determine that, because if I wanted to just ignore it and continue, I'd have to wrap it in a try catch, which is a bit strange, right? So I think here I may have over exceptioned. I think this should return an alternative value, right? And an alternative value is pretty obvious. I think in this case it'd be an optional or an expected. Like, I could not, given this thing, I could not do the YAML things. We still want a wide contract. We still want this to be valid for all inputs. We don't want any preconditions on this, because YAML could even now could come from user controlled code, right? The scene YAML file, which I ship with the release of the game, any user could change, right? So we have to expect anything and deal with it gracefully. So we can't have UB in this function, or we cannot allow user input to trigger UB, should we say? I think that is probably I think it's a safer way of viewing it. But I think in this case, this should return something and allow the user to decide whether that's an error or not. And I have this, which is funny because like I use this example a lot, and I think I've even said it on stream before, like when people don't use exceptions. I'm like, well, it really depends on what your error is. Like, reading from the file system should probably not be an exception, because the file system is racy, things happen all the time. But your config code, which has to read from the file, might use the read file function that you defined, which doesn't throw, and then choose to raise that as an exception. So I think I'm going to rewrite this today. I think this is going to be the next part of this. I think this could be a bit fun, a bit cathartic, because we're going to have to update all the tests as well. This is probably a good use of LLMs, but I'm absolutely 100% not going to use it. We're going to write it all manually because I think it's fun. But like, I think if you say, hey, can you rewrite this class to return something else rather than an exception, would save some time. I'm not interested in saving that time. I'm interested in doing it with you guys. So let's think about the interface first before we go and change everything. We have several choices for what you can return, right? Terrible. Mate, didn't work. But there's no real way to return the correct thing if it did work. So you'd have to have some sort of out parameter, and out parameters are a dreadful idea. So let's not do that. We could return an error code, but I would lump that into the same issues as balls, so I'm not even going to write it. We could return an optional, right? I either could or could not produce the thing that you asked for. Good luck. We could return a variant of the object and then some sort of error type, okay? And prior to C++26, 23, I would say this is probably what we want to do in this case. But now we have expected, right? Which takes a T and an error type, okay? And this is let me get my type theory correct. This is a product type. So it represents one of those two things. You can either have the object in it or you can have an error type. And I think that's what we want here, because you might want to know why your UML failed to UML, right? And we can get some sort of string error out of this. And I'm not going to create a custom error type. We're just going to say it's either the thing that you asked for or a string. And the string will be the error message. So let's go through that. Yes, exactly. It's exactly equivalent of Rust's result TE, but with all the weird nuance of C++ applied to it. So let's take expected. So we're going to have to edit a lot of this code now. So let's do serialize first. So you're going to give it a class, okay, which conforms to this class concept. It is impl, which probably is a bit of annoying because as the user facing, like, what is this implementation defined thing? Which I don't want to vomit it into the global namespace. So for now, it's fine. I don't know if you're talking about me, but I would definitely not consider myself to have a Midlands accent. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So I think that's what we want to return, right? Like, and also you can have the same type, I believe, in expected, because internally it knows whether it is the expected or the unexpected. So do we? Yeah. So let's have a look at what. So I'm going to do YAML exception, right? Because this is what it returns. So this is a runtime error, and it has a message and a mark. I can assume mark is not the apostle, but the where it is in the code. So pos line and column. Okay. So what we're going to want to do is we are going. No, it's not pointers. It's all stack allocated. So it will use a buffer of the largest type, and then we'll effectively place something new into that. I think in order for it to be const expert, it has to do the optional trick where it is an anonymous union. It is an internal anonymous union, but I suspect internally it's it'll be the size of the larger of the two objects plus some bookkeeping. It'll probably be a union under the hood. I know, right? Preaching to the choir there. Okay, so I think really what we want to do, right, is do... Because we want to allow... This function could effectively mark no except as well, because we're basically going to say that this is never going to throw an exception. Well, I'm originally from the South Coast, right? So I would consider myself to have a reasonably standard RP kind of accent, but I don't know. I guess it's in the ear of the beholder. No, that's Python. So let's do const YAML exception E, right? So this is going to return the can I just wrap this? I think I might be able to just wrap this. I'll have to check. Yeah, no worries. Okay, right, so that's what we're going to do, and then this is going to be return stud unexpected stud string. Actually, I might be able to just infer the type and do. Actually, no, let's do stud format. I'll get there in a minute. E dot mark e dot. Sorry, e dot message e dot mark. Okay. Oh god, no, that's going to need a separate formatter, isn't it? What is my pos line and column? Remember that, pos line and column. Pos e dot mark dot line e dot mark dot column. Okay. And then we can do catch stud exception E, and this will be return stud unexpected stud format, because I think this just gives it to you as a C string. E dot what? And then Pokemon, catch them all, return stood unexpected, stood format. I'd probably just at this point just do stood string unknown exception. Okay, so that's kind of the top level handle of how we get there. And then we just need to make sure that all these now return. So do serialize, right, is going to have to now return. Hang on, let me just get this right. I haven't really thought this far through. So do the top level do serialize, which is this one here for the class. We'll have to return, these are all going to have to now return expected because we're going to have to percolate them up. And this is kind of one of my issues with exception with not using exceptions in general design, is that it now pollutes the interface and everything now has to return this type. This is fine in this case because they are kind of self-contained and it's all effectively just a small bit of library code. But you can imagine in a much bigger system, if you want your stood expected deep down to percolate to the top, then you'd have to make all of your functions return that all the way up and aggregate different error types and stuff like that, which exceptions solve. So do serialize. So this is going to be a stood expected stood string, all right? So we're going to turn that, and then this is basically going to be return that, but obviously the internal method here, if at any point, so hang on, this is going to be const auto element equals that, and then basically actually I think we can do if not inner element, right, then return stood unexpected inner element dot error. How would you learn this? The problem is that you are seeing the sort of the aggregation of over a decade's experience in this case. So you are seeing the aggregate of over a decade's worth of experience. So I try and keep these as approachable as possible, but there's a lot of extra bits going on. You start off much higher level than this. I don't really know what your experience is, but Python and JavaScript are great places to start off with. Writing projects and tools and stuff that you find useful is much more engaging than just going through standard leak code style problems. Avoiding LMs I think is good in the sense of avoiding LMs to generate code. I think using LM as a tutor though is a great use of the tool. Be like, hey, I want to learn some Python. We can prompt it please don't give me any code, but please give me what are my first 10 small programs that I'm going to write, and then you can give it to it and say, hey, can you please review these for me, and it can give you some feedback. So you can use it to your advantage. Just don't fall into the trap of getting to write the code for you, because then you will never learn anything. You'll never build up those kind of the muscle memory of writing the code. Yeah, LMs are the new Google. Yeah, if you want to make a script for the terminal, then Python, start learning some Python, right? And learn the basic syntax, and then find a little project that you want and see if you can figure it out. Sorry, there's a question here. Will bang in a not break on bool? That is false. So stood expected. So these are all these deserialized methods are all going to return a stood expected type. I'm going to change all of them. and that has the explicit bool operator on it, which means I can do not that, and it will tell me if it's in the error state, basically. But it's good. It's a good question. It's a good point. Okay, so we're going to have to just go through all these now. So this is going to be std expected. Std string or std string view? Do I want to force an allocation? I think it should be std string. I think it should own it. We're on the unhappy path at that point anyway. So this again is going to be... It's interesting because this actually does... See, I think you'll see here how this does make the code slightly messier. Because now I have to do stuff like... and then do... if not in an element, turn in an element dot error, else object in place, and I have to move this in, right? So I think that actually makes the code less readable. Because exceptions do free you up just to write the code line by line, right? How many of these have I got? So many. Oh, goodness. Right. Okay. 1, 2. Follower goal met. 2,300 followers on Twitch. That's madness. Hello, everyone. I know you're not all here now, but hello. So do deserialize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 more to go. Let's see if we can bash these out. And then update the tests and update the call site. Maybe I'll do serialize off stream because we kind of sim what I mean then. But I think what this has taught me is that I need to think a little bit more carefully around how I handle what I consider an error, rather than just sort of blindly using exceptions. Because exceptions are very easy to use, but they're not always the. I'm prepared to admit they're not always the right choice. Right, so this is going to get messy as well. So we're gonna have to do auto deserialized key equals do deserialize type name t key type key, right? Oh, can I do this with the monadic types to keep it simpler? I don't think there's anything simple at this point. If not deserialize key, return deserialize key dot error. Because you could use or else there, but I still need the two types separately, so that's not going to work for me, is it? Deserialized value equals do deserialize type name t map type value. If not, deserialize value, return deserialize dot error. I'm pretty sure it's the error. We'll find out later if I'm right or not. And then this now becomes ct std move deserial. Oh, ClangD is really struggling with this. I'm not sure if that will deduce. Actually, let's have a hang on. Let's Hello? Hello? Well, that was weird. I don't know how that happened. I didn't touch anything. How bizarre. Anyway, what I'm saying is that I don't think I need to kind of wrap these in some sort of initializer. I'm pretty sure that this will match that 6th constructor, but this is going to explode horribly when we try and compile it. Like, this is absolutely not going to work. Okay, and again, I'd argue now worse code. Do the serialize. Oops. Unexpected. Nope. What am I doing? Inner element dot error. Oh, hang on. That's a good point. I've just had a sudden thought. The error returns it as a value, which means it's going to try and stick that in there. I might need to wrap that in an unexpected. What does error return? It returns the unexpected value as an E. Okay, fine. So that is a bug. I suspect actually it's a compilation error. Oh no, probably yeah. So this needs to be stood unexpected. And you can fix that for all the others as well. All right. I did it there for some rando reason, and after that point, I sort of gave up. Yeah, we got some ranges, even if it's the ranges we wrote before, but it's still ranges. Okay, we need there. So we've got 3 more, but this is right. Right. Oh, yeah, I already. Oh, wait a minute, I just haven't finished doing this one yet. That's fine. And then that should be stood move inner element. Again, like, annoying, right? Because not only do I have to sort of stick this as a separate variable, it now can no longer be const. I have to do this extra check. There's a lot more bookkeeping. Just saying. Just saying. Stood expected. It's kind of cathartic around this though, so I won't knock it too much. 26, we are using reflection. Look, right here, right now, reflecting the shit out of this enum, and we've got contracts. We ran some contracts earlier. So I think this just becomes return the unexpected stood format, like that. And this just always returns success, but we'll have to, these two always return stood expected. Oh, so we have to still have to say the type to make it consistent. And then that's fine. I think we just have to promote this to stood expected. And then I'm really hoping the compiler will figure that out for us. But I say that a lot. Is that going to be type name? God damn it. Thanks, compiler. Yeah, join the Discord. People are always there, have to help. We've got a whole range of abilities. There's, you know, we've got some people who are just starting their journey. We've got some people doing it a while. There's a lot of people there who are a lot better at me at pretty much everything. So do come along, ask for help and support. Okay, I think this is now kind of enough that we can try and rank our tests. This will not compile. That is the splicing mate. That is how you go from the reflection compile time space to the value compile time space. It basically says, given every enumerator of this enum, right? If it is, well, we're deserializing, aren't we? So if we match the one that's in the thing we're deserializing, then we can return the value of it. C+26, yeah. I think it's easier to understand on the serialization route. Do we do the enum somewhere? What am I doing? Anyway, fine. Yeah, basically it's splice, and then this is the reflection operator, the double carry. So that's how you turn a type into a stud meta info. No one I decide what the next video will be, but I triage everything that people send me, and I basically keep a list of them, and I kind of just, it's always a balance between what's feasible in a month, because I only really have 1 month to do a video. What do I think is going to be useful? What do I think is going to be entertaining? What do I think is going to have a story? What do I think has the potential to do well as a YouTube video? What do I think I can get a decent title and thumbnail out of? So ultimately it's kind of a function of all those things, but really it's kind of, there's no escalation or quick route or sort of like paid way to influence my how I vibe with the suggestions that I've got. But yes, if you want to suggest stuff, do it on Discord. Is the best place to suggest stuff, because it is kind of like the most permanent list. Anything that gets emailed to me or sent on YouTube, I have to kind of remember to put in a separate document in Obsidian for me, whereas Discord is just always there and it's easier for me to so I guess statistically I'm probably more likely to pick something from Discord because it's convenient, but it's definitely not in any way, I'd say, like prioritize other than that. Anyway, let's see what errors. I don't really want any of these. I mean, obviously I don't want any errors, but like I really want to know. I can see it's the debug render at 261, isn't it? But that's the serialize. Didn't I change the deserialize? Have I gone and changed the wrong one? I've had a fucking mare, haven't I? I've just realised what I've done. One absolute burk. Sorry. I've done the, because they're in order of the serialized helper methods and the deserialized helper methods, I've changed this. So what's the quickest way to rectify this? It's probably to just undo this for now, and then because I really want to get something working. What absolute pillock. Apologies for that. That's actually still, I think that's still technically valid. I just got to remove this. Right, as long as we don't throw, we're fine. Okay, fine. So now this should be. I'm really sorry about that. That was on my. That's on me. So I basically need a very similar construction, right? Should work. Oh, there's one other change I made that I forgot to go over. In the exception class, I suddenly had this thought that I now use the new C++26 breakpoint if debugging. I think it's 26. So when we go to construct an exception, so literally the point where we're about to throw it, if a debugger is attached, it will issue a breakpoint, which means we get basically break on throw for free, which I think should be quite useful because I think we're not going to be throwing loads of exceptions. So if one is constructed, we probably want to know about it. And we can always continue past it. So yeah, I added that because that's a new 2026. Yeah. Breakpoint. Great. In the new debugging header, there is now, it is 26. So you get now breakpoint, which will just issue a breakpoint in whatever platform specific way. So that's debug break on Win32 or just int3 on x86. And then breakpoint if debugging, then is debugger present. So those are quite nice. Yeah, and it's nice that GC already has those. So anyway, let's go back to the problem is now I've got too many buttons on my Stream Deck that are actually useful. Okay, let's try making the tests again and see where we go wrong. I think there's... I can't remember. I've looked at this before, how it detects if a debugger is present. I think there's I think it's just a Linux syscall for it somewhere. You can query if a debugger is attached because the kernel has to effectively attach a process to a debugger, has to signal that it's attached. So I think you can query it. Is it in ptrace? Okay. Okay, so this is main 172. So this is interesting. So this is now what I was talking about, right? This before would just throw, right? But it would always throw, regardless of whether deserialization is whether we want it or not. As in, sorry, regardless of whether we consider that an error or not. I would say that when we go to load all textures, when we go to get the manifest for the textures, if we cannot pass that as YAML, then that is a hard error and we should throw here, but it's our decision to make. And that's kind of really the philosophy I'm getting through. It's like this now becomes if not texture manifest, right? Throw third. Sorry, that'd be nice if that was that. UFS exception texture manifest dot error. Manifest. But actually, I think we can do better than this. I think our ensures, right? Let's see if we can do this. Can we do template class T, class E, class args, right? Can we do const x auto ensure stood expected T E, right? Obj. Then all this governs format string dot. Oh no, actually I don't even want that. Like, because if it just check this, right? There's no need for any, because that will give us. Do we want to supply any extra information, or do we want to just print out the error? I think making it simple, actually. I think we can then just do if not obj. In fact, actually, let's hang on. I think we can reuse what we've already got. I think we can then do ensure not obj.error. Although that will evaluate right to left, won't it? Which is always the issue we have, and then that'll be UB if it's not in the error state. So I think we might have to do, if not obj. Sorry, I'm just going to save myself a bug there. I think we just need to do throw exception obj.error, right? It's probably our responsibility to make sure errors are always formatable. Okay, so now I should be able to just do ensure texture manifest. And that. Has it got the arrow operator? Does it have the arrow operator? I assume it does, and that accesses the success one. Anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? So then we can do ensure manifest manifest. Oh no, not that. Manifest models. Whoa, hang on. What have I done? Oh, it's because I'm missing that. Okay, fine. We do load the model manifest description twice, which I think is probably, if not a bug, then something we should probably address. But I think for now, it's fine. Okay, so how's that treating us? I think the scene probably is going to be the same. But you see what I mean now? Like this kind of elevates up the error handling to us. Okay, now we're actually at the errors for the thing I wrote. For time, got a bit of time left. Try and get this done and the tests updated. If I just missed YAML serializer 166. I think I've just missed a bracket, haven't I? Yeah. Nailed it. Okay. So now we're at the test, which is good. So which ones did I do? This I did this serialized, didn't I? Or did I do deserialize? I did deserialize, didn't I? This isn't even in the tests. What am I talking about? In fact, actually, I can tell which one I did then. So I did deserialize. So SF YAML serialized tests, right? So I probably want does access object. Also, there's a union of type and errors private. Yeah, I thought so. Okay, nailed it. It's going to be such pain. So this is going to be. So I'm going to need to do assert true result on all these, and then assert true like that. I think is how this is going to have to go. So 194. Why is it not like that? Do deserialize is ambiguous. Why is this now introducing ambiguity? Thoughts? Core of overload. Do deserialize simple is ambiguous with what? That's what I need. Here, 2 candidates. It's the YAML serializer 57 and 236. 7. Okay. 236. That's annoying. Why is that? Why is that now introduced? It's basically it's conflating. Wait a minute. Oh no, it's because I've forward declared some of these types to work and I've not updated them. That's why. So the only one I've forward declared. So that'll work. Yes, that is correct. Rust result is effectively. I don't know how Rust implements under the hood, and I don't know if they're comparable in terms of the internals, but I think semantically they are equivalent, adjacent. All right, that should be better. That's more what I want to see, I think. Do I want to see this? Here we go. I want to see this in. I want to see in the test 194. Why is it still? Curiouser and Curiouser. Sorry, I think you can't see the full error now, can you? Is that an issue? So with T simple, we return. Okay, I need to have a play around with that. If I pinned the wrong thing, I have. Nice, love it. Okay, well, just to accept that. Figure out the rest is left as an exercise to the reader. Okay, so the issue here is that we're assigning an int. So this is from the inner serialization, isn't it? I think the issue here is that we're returning do serialize T with a simple. 194 we've requested there. Cannot convert stood expected int, okay, to a stood expected string. Why is that? It's we're missing a composition of types somewhere. So what's 291 doing? So that's fine. Where are we? Serialize a test, blah, blah, blah. Where is it returning this? Two 252. Oh, have I just missed? I've just missed this one. That's fine. I just missed this in the changing of it. So this has got to be. Oh, this should just be. Why? This is a sub member. Hang on, wait a minute. Is this not? I think that's it. I think I was just missing. I just don't think I'd implemented it correctly. Okay, we've moved on. YAML serialize 291, still 194, still 194, still in a bad time. Okay. Cannot convert. Oh, hang on. I'm going to need to do that for those, aren't I? I'm going to need to actually dereference it out because I want to. Can I even move out of that? What does it mean to... I wonder what... I think that's valid because I don't use it after. Basically, what I'm doing is dereferencing... Hang on. Whoa. Hang on. Everyone, hang on. Right, operator star, access the expected value. Returns a reference. Okay. I will then convert that to an X value with std move. Pass that into the constructor, which will then bind to an R value reference if one is available, otherwise a const L value reference. If it is an R value reference or a forwarding reference, then I will get the movement optimization, right? So I can move, quote unquote, move out of the expected. I will just leave that in a valid but unknown state. Yeah, is anyone else convinced? Have I convinced anyone else? That is legit. So all these now need to be star, right? Because I don't want to do, like, just because I'm, like, I'd be absolutely furious if moving away from exceptions makes the code less performant. That is, I mean, that I'd get that on a t-shirt if that was the case, but, like, that'd be wild. Okay, let's try that. I thought you said sounds like it works, but you said sounds like words. Okay, we're getting there. Smaller errors. YAML serialize reaches the end of a curiouser and curiouser. Oh yeah, hang on. Sure, whatever. Don't care. I have no interest in J. So I think, sorry, I would probably have an interest in J just because I think new and emergent languages are interesting. If I've not had time to learn Rust, I don't know where I'd have time to learn J. I strongly suspect that Jonathan Blow and I would have very divergent views on software engineering, and that's not to say either one of us is right or wrong. I just think we would disagree a lot philosophically. So I'd be interested to see what his language is like. He has raided the channel before though, so like he has had some impact on us. Okay. So now back to main on 403. What does this not? This is going to be the... Again, kind of annoying. So now I have to do auto scene description equals ifs YAML deserialize ifs scene description string.str. Where does that come from? Where's it go? If not, scene description. Oh no, wait a minute, sorry. Ensure. Oops. Scene description. Oh, what am I doing? What am I doing? All of it took. Alright, do that. And then this now becomes third move scene description. Description. Right, get it in. Maybe. Indeed. That's where I was going. Yeah, so it was a while ago. It was literally just before I was about to end. He dumped like 1,000 people on us, which was quite interesting. And then I went back and watched his VOD, and because I was curious what he said, and he was like, "I need to raid someone. This guy will do." And that was basically it. So I think I just got lucky rather than him actually being interested in what I was doing. What? Why is that not? Oh, because again, ergonomics. Need more stars. I'm very thankful. Hopefully, a few people stuck around. Stuck around. I mean, test be testing. Boom, crushed it. It's actually kind of amazing that the tests work. I think I'm actually missing tests though, so now I need to... Wait a minute, hang on. How are they all working? Interesting. What's the equality operator do on expected? Performance connection between two expected objects. Ah, ooh, is this promoting this to a I know it's expected, I've called it. I wonder if it's sticking that in a stood expected, because I've not had to dereference this. So in fact, I probably don't even need to check that at all. Because if it's unexpected, we should have a failing case here, I think, just to I can't remember how long ago it was. Not that long ago. Okay, right. So let's ensure expected. Commit. Update. Sorry. Change serialization to return stood expected. I don't want all these changes. I want that, I want that. I want that, I want that. I want that one, I want that one. Don't want that one, don't want that one, don't want that one. Do want that one, do want that one, don't want that one. To integrate changes. Right. Everybody's there. Let's stick that in the git hole. T stream 43. Right, hang on. Let's just check that runs one more time before we all disappear. I've tagged it. Okay, right. This seems to look good. Right, so next stream we will endeavor to continue this. So at the moment we can click this and we can add a single rigid body which just gets anchored to the center and parented to this. So we'll have a list of rigid bodies down the side. You won't be able to see it because the font is too small, but I will be able to see it and you'll just have to take my word for it. Then we'll be able to click them individually to select them, and then we'll be able to get a local transform widget on them. That will then allow us to start building all these out to like the exactly what we want. Then we'll need to be able to save it and bring that back. And then once we've done that and we can duplicate it, we're basically then ready to build out the physics of the level, which I might do on stream, I might not, I'm not decided yet. But basically we'll do that, and then we can write the character controller, and then we're very close to being kind of done with this portion of physics. After that, we can run around and bump into things. We need to do some like pew pew pew. We need to probably get a gun in there and start shooting things. Then we need to do rigid body animation. Then we need to add some enemies, and then we need to kind of coalesce everything together, and then do like there's a whole bunch of optimizations we've just left on the table, but I'm not fussed about doing now. I hope that was interesting. It was something slightly different today, but I needed to do something slightly different today. So I hope that was kind of interesting and useful, and it's just a chance to kind of just chat a bit more and write a bit more code, I guess, a bit more cathartic stream than just like wrangling the Jolt API, which I don't know, just no true. Just don't think I wanted to do today, but we're back to it. Back to it in earnest on Wednesday. I'm planning on stramming again. We will stram. And then yeah, we'll see where we get to. But I think back to normal then. What's the date? Day 28th. Okay. I think that's all I've got, really. It's now warm in here. I need to get out of here. I need a beer. Otherwise, do come on Discord. Do go sit down and watch all the videos. I don't think there's anyone to raid. Let's have a quick look for the Twitch people. Same category. Search by tag CPP. There's one guy with 2 viewers. It says coding a game engine from scratch, but I'm dead inside, and it has a no AI tag. You should go and say hello to him. He is faceless, but he is. Let's look at C++. And he doesn't have 2-phase construction, so it must be good. Streams are available pretty much instantly on YouTube, so you can always go there and watch them. Other than that, I'll see you all anon.